podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead Podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you could please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. You are listening to Good Brothers. This episode was recorded just coming in or through the weekend, heading towards this election, and you'll be listening to this after the election is already in process. What the outcome of things will be to be revealed, as they say. However, one just note on the technical side, we had a little bit of difficulty, so we had to use some other formats. So if the sound is not the way you want it to sound, my apologies. But please, as always, take the best part for yourself. Peace. Peace.
Peace, my brother.
What's up?
Oh, man. Hey, man. It's a lot going on, man.
Yeah, it's another day in America. So, unfortunately, where this summer started is where it's still at, or the fall is still at, and it just in the broad strokes of it, at least. So a young man named Walter Wallace Jr. was killed by officers in Philadelphia, in what was apparently him in a manic moment or what have you, with a weapon. I guess I think it was said. I'm not, I don't want to misquote. Trying to keep it weaponish, right? Something that appeared to be a weapon, whatever. And it takes me back to, and I want to load it up for you, and then I'll add on. Again, I'm not here to try to process the details of the incident, right? That's not
right.
That's not. But trying to engage thought around, returning to this matter of police being this catch-all for stuff that's happening,
mm-hmm.
that may or may not be the best thing for police to be doing,
mm-hmm.
Or at least for them to have to manage without other community resources.
Yes, sir.
So I have a personal note that I want to add, but first I wanted to get your thought just on the situation. Like, what's some of your thoughts?
Yeah, man. It's been sticking with me. I mean, the city of my birth, city that I love, already took hits with the Freddie Gray. I mean, not Freddie Gray. Shit, sheesh, so many people died. George Floyd, right? The George Floyd murder. And, they tore the town up. However you want to look at it, whoever did it, whatever the logic, it was the likes of which they hadn't seen since '68. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Since places was tore up on that level, right? And so, to deal with this again, but to deal with this, I think, specific thing that I want to talk about, and I know you're going to add on, which is this issue of mental health, and to your point, how mental health interacts with the criminal legal system, and how it interacts with quote unquote public safety or state-sanctioned agents who can deal with you, though they do not in any way have the skills, talents, and abilities to deal with you. But that's the person that's dealing with you, right? To me, it's almost like you need to get, you need to get like your gallbladder taken out, and it's in a dentist because they're a doctor.
Right. Well, he's been.
Right?
He's got a MD or something.
He's got an MD.
Like one.
Doesn't he have an MD?
Like the same thing now?
No, right. Like that doesn't mean he should take out my gallbladder because he's a dentist. And so when you think about a toxic mix, right, of trauma, stress, mental health issues, and then the idea that our system, and I want to take this back because I think it's really important, at least in the context of Pennsylvania, to share this history about like the mental health hospitals being closed down 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mental health hospitals were closed down 30 years ago because of a federal ruling in Pennsylvania, because of how people were being treated, and also the economics of mental health hospitals, where, they were really, really, really expensive. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of people getting paid. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have got paid. There was a lot of people getting overtime. And as well as the infamous story about someone had some blunt head trauma and they started speaking a language that the hospital officials couldn't understand. So they put this person in a mental health hospital for months, only to find out that when a priest came to see somebody, the priest heard them speaking and understood the language. We'll kind of find out that the person was speaking a Russian dialect. And since they didn't know that the person was speaking a Russian dialect, and assumed because of the head trauma that person was dealing with mental health issues, versus no, they just spoke a dialect you couldn't understand, that you had somebody that was in a mental health hospital. So because of all those things. But what happened was essentially, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, then the basic idea was let the criminal legal system deal with mental health issues and they'll get the help they need there. Right? So a lot of money went into jails. Not nearly enough money went into mental health. Right? And so that's how you have a system that now people can get a certain amount of intake hours, a certain amount of time and inpatient. For the most part, the idea before of you having mental hospitals where people could be for long term, that's not happening anymore. So the people who have those challenges, who 30 years ago would have been somewhere for an extended amount of time, guess what? They're walking the streets. And they're walking the streets in places of reoccurring trauma. They're walking in places of reoccurring stress. They got access to weapons, right? And this is just a real conversation that we have to have, right? And it's not demonizing them. It's actually centering them to say, we have a population who needs much more help than we're giving. In most places, not every place, in most places, the end recourse is the police, right? Who are not suited to deal with this population. So this young man had a long legal history. And that particular day, the cops had been called 3 times that day. So clearly he was having a manic episode, and clearly the family could not resolve it. So they called for an ambulance because they essentially wanted him to get an ambulance, I guess them to be able to wrestle him down and then kind of take
subdue him,
right?
Like take him to the I don't know if they call it in Pennsylvania. Some places, I know in New Jersey it's called SKIP. I think it's SKIP is the acronym. And like basically they can take you in, you know what I'm saying, take you off the street, but in a mental health fashion.
In a mental health fashion. So you call in for that, but when you call for that, it goes over the thing, listen, go be careful. And then it also says, hey, this person dealing with mental health issues. But there was no hack in the system that somebody said, oh, mental health issues, 61st and Locust. Maybe you should call the mental health place around the corner from his house to see if someone can send somebody.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that would have solved the problem, right? Maybe they would have got this and said, oh, man, we can't do nothing with homie. Maybe, but we don't know because police got there, and this is the 3rd time the cops have been called. So therefore, now homie's turned up and he's acting and they are going by the book as far as being police. I'm not knocking them. As far as being police, they did what they were supposed to do. Please put your gun down, running away from me. They were doing the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it still ended up with a man dying. Now, folks, I'm gonna say folks wrongly tore their own neighborhoods up again. Folks wrongly tore their own business districts up again, right? And I'm saying wrongly in this sense is because there's some specific strategies that people could have used to actually talk about getting some resolution. Now, I also must say that in this particular situation, because of the use of force law in the state of Pennsylvania, those police officers never will serve a day in jail. Never. Because use of force here says if a peace officer, which is called, the police are called actually, ironically, if a peace officer feels in any way their life is threatened, they're able to use force.
Yeah.
In response to that. Right? And that's a state statute. So my thing is this idea of you tearing up 52nd Street, you tearing up 60th Street, you tearing up Lancaster Avenue, right? To resolve a state law that's controlled by Republicans. And here's the thing. Do you think Republicans are going to change the law more now that you tore Philadelphia up? I get it. I'm not demonizing people, but I'm saying here's the reality, right? And part of it is the challenge of performance over power, which is, we can talk about another time.
Mm-hmm.
But the bigger thing for me is I've been thinking and really messing with, like, what does it mean when this cocktail of mental health issues, access to weapons, police that are not qualified, like how many people are being dealt with in ways that are counterproductive? How many families are seeing someone drug out of house? How many people are seeing all these things happen because we as a society have not chosen to hack a system that we all know is broken, right? And I just think it's a really classic perspective to show how systems conspire to fail people when we don't take the time to actually deal with the system. And again, how many of our family members, how many people we love could possibly be in this situation if they find themselves in an episode, but not have the support that they need to be able to help them and be able to avert like a tragedy. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's out of respect and privacy. I'm just going to couch it as a family member, close family member that I deeply and intimately connected to, has a schizoaffective disorder. And, other family members, we provide care and, what I can do from a distance to manage how they're doing, connect with them, when they're in a space. And the fear and the concern that I'm going to get a call that something happens to them in the midst of a episode, it's something I walk with every day, right? And I think about, I play out the scenarios in my head if something was to happen to him, specifically with, with police. And there's been incidents with neighbors, fisticuffs, such ways where he ended up with a charge, right? Where ultimately, I'm pretty sure if I was there, I know ways that they may have escalated the situation. But I doubt the virtue of the persons who assaulted, who were involved in the altercation. We're just like, we're just trying to defend ourselves, right? Like, this is a really challenging thing to deal with. And I hope within the midst of all of the other stuff, it's not lost that, I mean, it's not even it's not just a thing of de-escalation. Like, de-escalation is a part of the when you're managing someone that's dealing with, depending on whatever the particular manifestation of health is.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more than just, you gotta know how to calm them down. You gotta know how to talk to them, right? Like, yeah, And then also though, like it's it's a lot of factors, and I worry that it's that a overly simplified analysis of the situation in terms of what to change policy wise, what to change structural, right? And I'm not, like how folks protesting, like, I'll say for the record, if you thought smashing up somebody's oil shop on 52nd Street was going to get, like, there's no linkage between those two. I understand you're angry, but there's no linkage to a changed outcome by doing that to that, right? And I challenge anyone that is there just I don't know, just a different tactic. I understand, like, I'm not here to have be the media bludgeon of some sort. Like, we're like, oh yeah, see, even the good brothers think that y'all it's a bunch of shiftless, no good smash and grabbers. Like, no. This is not that.
Right.
This is as your loving brother in the world and in the struggle for our people, implore you, young person or older person or whatever old person. I don't know how old some of these people is. We have no idea. And those who would be seen as leaders in that finite space to be aware, yes, in solidarity in public, ain't nobody here going to be, telling on y'all, so to speak, right? Like, that's not the thing. Right. But at some point, y'all got to have a we upset meeting where y'all go, hey, y'all, don't let the youngins go over there. Don't let, if you see somebody going there to do that, man, then stop them. like there has to be some conversation about it. And so table that, back to the broader thing is we have a conversation that needs to be continued because people are trying to have the conversation in all these different parts and pieces in most cities. Most places in the country, somebody's trying to either directly get different, either enhance if they have a mental health crisis response unit, within their emergency response apparatus. There's probably one in your community. It may not be as robust. Might be one officer and one or two officers trained and one or two social workers trained to make those calls. So I don't want it to be lost that people are working on it, but the level of focus on actually like getting that together, the public awareness conversation of it from a public health perspective, like of educating our public on, like, when people are maybe displaying like early manic behaviors and how to engage, and the way all that mixes over with, like, what do they call it, concurrent stressors and whatnot, right? So you may have someone that has a like a bipolar or a schizoaffective disorder, and they may be self-medicating, right, with certain substances, but then that may be exacerbated by housing issues. That might be exacerbated by interpersonal family issues. Meaning something happens in the family that they was cool, but then they upset, and then like that triggers, like there's these layers and other stuff. Then you can have neighborhood stuff, like everybody, oh, he always been kind of wild. Like, no, he always been like, he or she has always been dealing with this issue actually, and a force on force response to it. It could be masked within other like acceptable dynamics, right? That like no, actually, this person, they don't always go to fight because they like fighting. They go to that because that is the channel that feels open to them when they get there, right? Like even to where it might someone's really having a start of an episode and they're like, oh, he just emotional. No, actually, that's not how emotions work. He's not just emotional. He actually to get the behavior to change, you can't stop it that way. You can't interrupt what's happening. And so there's a public awareness piece that that comes with it. And then there's I've seen enough, and it even happens a couple places that I move around the city here, right? Houseless individual came to the shop, that stock a couple weeks ago, a month ago, middle of the summer. And he wasn't like totally off, but he was sort of like, he was in a spot and he was sort of like saying stuff to people, but everyone was just extra like mellow. Like nobody escalated the situation. He didn't, anyway, we all just sort of like with compassion was like, hey man, you gotta, like, you all right? All right, man, head this way, like kind of, and like another cat who kind of knew him from being out there was sort of like, who had more of a relationship with him, was trying to message to him, right? Right, but it's not fair for that man that he has to wholly depend on the compassion, the hopefulness that the people that happen to be there are have a level of understanding that they can be mellow and deal with where he's at in that moment, right? And like it would be beautiful if that's how the whole world worked, right? But that's not the case. Like some people will perceive, oh, this dude is spitting out his mouth and yelling stuff at me, so I'm a strike him. Like I feel threatened, I'm going to fight him, right? Or, if it was a different shop that had a different energy to it, maybe it was a hardy tardy, I'm gonna put it on Louis Vuitton with the Louis Vuitton shop. Maybe Louis Vuitton lady like, hey, I don't want to deal with this. I'm just calling security.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And the police. No,
right, I'm hitting the button.
And they're going to call the police, right? Because again, across the board, and so not just for police, but to your point, God, and I think that's a great point. If somebody walks in your job or somebody walks in your store, what access do you have to be able to think about who do you call?
All right, what am I do?
Right? Yeah, like and so I guess because of societally wise, we haven't, because to your point, I think that's an amazing point. We sometimes depend on the empathy of others versus structures. So in your space, y'all dealt with it a certain way, but that doesn't mean everyone can or has to. But what we should know is who to call in that case.
Right.
Right? They should like literally, just like we know to call the police. If somebody come in acting a certain way, call the mental health people first. Right? Like, and then call the mental health people and the cops concurrently, whatever. But call somebody that can be of assistance before we take it to that full extent. Because again, the police, unless you get a good cop, again, we're depending on individual perspective versus a systemic response, right? Like you call the one police officer who knows how to do this, right?
Yeah, and the thing is that these are things that can be trained and resourced. We can train people. People can be trained, and then I want to stress the resource part of, meaning that somebody, have it on their thing that 3 days a week I keep a number on that if something happens within 4 blocks of me,
that's right.
I go out. I meet up with the whoever, and we go try to deal with the situation or try to calm the person down, or I have a profile, or like I am sure it is possible to put together, especially. I think in cities, in townships of any scale, like, here's this person is a trained professional. They got an area, or they got a time frame, and if something happens, there's somebody that can come and help to hopefully, de-escalate or get the proper care, for a person that's having an episode. You know what I mean? And the resource in part to me is important because we can't, from a system perspective, from a structural perspective, you can't be asking people to like basically put themselves at risk because you can get hurt. Right. Somebody's having an episode and you try to calm them down and, they swing, like, maybe not necessarily trying to hit you, but they swing nonetheless and hit you. Or you trip over something, you know what I'm saying? They try to run over out in the street and you try to grab their arm because there was a car coming and because you didn't want them to get hurt. Right. And then you pull your shoulder out of socket. Right. Like we have to protect you. We have I feel we have an obligation in society to say, no, we're going to make sure if something happens to you in the course of trying to do something that makes us all safer, that you'll be whole, that you'll be able to be taken care of. You know, your kids, you know, ain't gonna be like, yeah, daddy used to work he used to be a plumber, but he went to help, you know, old Mr. Jack was having an episode down the street, and now, you know, my dad can't work no more.
No, that's a great point, because I think we often err rightfully on the side of having more compassion versus a systemic response, acknowledging that this is not easy stuff, right? That this isn't easy. Like, as much as everyone would like to say, like, hey, you should have done this, what would you have done? And would you have been able to sense that correctly every time? Right? Like, you know, and you know, the other one that is the infamous one here is like, shoot him in the leg. So you think if you shoot somebody in the leg, they won't bleed out and die? Like, you won't hit an artery? Like, this idea that there's a place on someone to shoot them.
That'll be, you can guarantee will be that they'll be all right afterwards.
Right. Like, I can't guarantee that if I shoot you in the leg or the arm, that the bullet don't, you know, play ping pong in your chest. I just can't, like, you know what I mean? So, and the last thing I want to say about this is kind of going back to my first point of, again, the failure of our system is when we divest from other things, we leave it on certain other people to solve problems that, frankly, are outside of their scope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And two parties who in our society, we have asked to solve problems that are outside of their scope, even with enhanced training, in my estimation, are police and teachers. Mm-hmm. We've had a breakdown of systems all around, right? Redefining public safety means doing all the stuff that keeps the public safe to make sure police should never come. That is the broader public safety strategy, right? Yeah. How do you get rid of all the problems that create the conditions where they have to show up? And then we have to figure out their biases. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was gonna say, because I think all of our systems always have things that they externalize and say that's somebody else, you know. So, you know, for a long time, schools, you know, like, hey, it's not our problem if the kids can't eat. The kids ain't got no food, right? And then we say, well, you know, right, we should. It's in everybody's interest to feed the kids at school and make sure every kid that's there has got enough to eat so that they can lock in and do what they need to do or pay attention or whatever, right? You know, but and that's a more or less really, and maybe that's a kind of a simple one, like feeding people. That's a very ancient human behavior. Like, you come amongst me here, let me give you some of our fruit that we collected. You know what I'm saying? Like, we live on that valley. we caught some eggs from some kind of animal. Would you like to try some? You know what I'm saying? It's an offering of friendship. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever, you know what I mean, 200,000 years ago, I'm sure that would have went over the same way it does now. Like, oh, thanks for offering. I appreciate your kindness, right? Right. The general idea that then the much more complicated things, right? Like, kid seems to be talking about stuff that may or may not be dangerous, right? You know, that, oh man, he's talking about guns and this and that. And then it's like, oh, well, he could actually be talking about being into some extra gangster shit, or he could be into playing Call of Duty.
Right.
We're not sure. Right. And so then if you say to the teacher, you need to listen to those conversations, you need to parse together what's happening there. Now, I'm not saying that the teacher has should have no role, you know, listening or being aware of what kids is talking about. But also, it's kind of like, probably shouldn't leave that only to a person who's over here working on a lesson plan and a test. Like,
right.
There'd be some other people in the mix.
Right. Before the kid with 16 other kids in the room of varying stuff, right? Because there's also, you know, and this is unpopular, but it's real. There's also the kid in the room that's like, man, everybody else in here got a problem. If no one's listening to me, I'm going to fill out this document. Here, take this. B, C, whatever, next class. Because
Right.
It's like we all been in this class when the class get buck wild, right? people start fighting and all this, and this kid's in the room just like, man, shit, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, like you said, like, and I think teachers should be culturally competent and actually culturally competent, not just to the race, quote unquote, of their students, and the gender and orientation, but also culturally competent to the specifics of that region. For example, if someone's teaching out there with y'all to not know the history of gang culture, it's like how you not know the history of gang culture? Because because there's a very good chance that there's some kids coming in your room that's their connection. That's their dominant family connection.
Yeah.
So I ain't saying they gotta watch like Kev Mac videos and street, like, you know what I'm saying? Like LA street videos. I ain't saying they gotta know the history of the rolling 60s and 8 gangsters, but you should know that there's some young people coming in your room that are operating from this perspective.
Yeah.
So but again, I don't expect them to start throwing signs up and start figuring out what the signs mean when they throwing down Crip signs. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I expect you to call, to your point, external, I expect you to call the person into the room who knows what that means and let them deal with it.
Right. Let them engage in the way that's appropriate. And
you know what I mean? And inquire. And so I just think, like, again, it's easy for our system to externalize stuff. And frankly, as our systems become less comprehensive, and as technology starts to engage all of our systems, what we're finding more and more is that systems are going to be like, well, we care about this thing. We don't really care about that thing, right? And if someone doesn't ensure that you care about that thing doesn't get dealt with, right? And so if everyone's like, we want to make sure that the kids read and write at grade level, well, we're not going to talk about this other thing. Conversely, if the issue is stopping gang violence, quote unquote, air quotes, or the issue is stopping weapons trafficking, you're going to have 2 or 3 teams in police departments who do that.
Right.
But you're not going to have anybody that deals with mental health because we have said that that's not our priority, right? And so that from a policy and structural way, we have to engage that there's some silos that have to be busted to be able to like have a deeper conversation about these things, man. But I mean, definitely to the family of Walter Wallace Jr. And to the community, right? Because right now, because of his death, the resulting people watching the video all across the world, but especially in West Philadelphia, people are harmed, people are hurting, right? And then seeing the neighborhoods destroyed again, right? Seeing people lose their jobs because places are not going to open back up again. Neighborhoods that are already on the precipice, being harmed again, the ecosystem being rocked again, with no solution to the ecosystem being rocked, to your point earlier. Like, the fact that you stole a pair of sneakers that you can't fit and trying to sell them on the internet, because by the time you got into the sneaker store, all they had was size 8 and you wear size 10. Right? Like, that rocks the ecosystem because some of your friends work there. Some of the people need to go get medicine, but guess what? Every CVS in the neighborhood is going to be closed.
Yep. All of
That's just how it goes. The corporate's going to make a decision. Every CVS is going to be closed until we figure this out. And so,
Hey, I want to add one note before we move to another topic, and it's just something I want folks to understand. Being the family of the individual that might, sometimes have episodes and moments as they're trying to, manage their situation. It is it is very hard because you have pride in your family, right? You don't, and you want people to be like if you got neighbors and you had the same neighbors for years, and some neighbors like they knew you when you was, I knew you as a pup. Like, oh, like, yeah, I know sometimes he has some difficulties, right? Or sometimes she be da 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 da. So right, but then you have other, you got new neighbors. They don't got nothing. They don't care nothing about that.
Right.
Right. And as a person that's just conscientious, you be like, yo, I don't want my family member, and nor myself, if I was the person having the episodes, to be a burden to other people just trying to live their life. Like there's a very, I hope that folks understand, like for the family, there's a lot of different levels of like challenge with it. And that many families are, I would say from my experience, are as challenged with how to manage it, and there's pride and there's this and that. Like, so I think from a public health, like larger safety intervention planning perspective, I think managing that aspect, it would definitely be a part of it. Cause there's some families, when folks, we've probably all at some point engaged with someone who you engaged with them, you're like, all right, the brother, he cool, but something seems a little over here just by angle, right? And you may meet some of their family members, other people who look at you like, ain't nothing wrong. He just be tripping. She be on one with sometimes. And they'd be like, nah, I think your sister might need like care. Like there might be something that she could do that can help her with that. Or she just be in the back some days. You know what I'm saying? Like, the way we manage these things, is very personal. And so I understand when people are like trying to wrestle with what's happening here. And I just think I would, I started off with a more clear picture, but I would just go to like, bear in mind to implement some change, there's going to be a depth of like developing trust with people so they feel comfortable, like really acknowledging what's happening.
Right.
Because sometimes it'll be a family and it's certain family members that's all on board with whatever therapeutic treatment and care and accept, and working with it. And there's other family members that's like, I'm just going to stay away because I don't want to deal with it. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, so it's very difficult. In a pivot, and I would say just, again, much love to the family, much love to all of Philadelphia. May people find some peace of mind and peace in the near future with all of this. Yes, we are pre-election. Elections Tuesday, election day. The day when I was a kid, I used to be like, man, damn news gonna be on all night. I used to hate that.
Yeah, that's right. Your favorite show is not playing. Who's the boss? Who's the pause in the Wonder Years? It's not playing.
Somebody getting elected president. I'm like, man, that's a bull. Man, what is this? Why is this on all night?
And a whole bunch of down ballot people that you had no idea who they was, especially if they didn't get a TV ad.
Right, comptroller.
Yeah. Right. Second,
the Montgomery County, secretary of something. Like, what? Who is that? Like, I don't know who that person is.
Like a congressman from an area that's in the region, but ain't your congressman. Which is always the infamous one. Like, you'd be like, so you might know your congressman, maybe, but it may be back in the day more than now. But you damn sure don't know the congressman from 70, 80 miles from there.
Nah, man, not at all. I have no idea. I was actually thinking about that earlier. I was watching something. I was like, wait a minute, man, who was my congressman when I was a kid? Because I don't know if I do.
Hey, man.
I knew, what's my man, Bill Bradley, senator. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the senator.
I knew Senator Bill Bradley.
I knew y'all, Tom King. I knew y'all governor. And that was really just because my mom worked in Camden. So I just knew Tom King was. But like that, and I knew always, and whoever the mayor of Camden was, I always knew that because like they would be on TV and either somebody got shot or somebody was going to jail. They would always have the mayor of Camden on. So you always knew who the mayor of Camden was. And then I knew that y'all had like, I don't know if y'all did it in Burlington County, but they had freeholders instead of like council people, like
yeah.
County.
Yeah,
They got, like,
county freeholders, yeah.
Yeah, they had the county, and then it's the kid. It's like, you got a freeholder.
What they doing over there? What's that?
The hell they doing? Like, do they have a different job than council people? Because damn sure it sounds like they got a different job, Jack. Like, it's like lumberjacks. Freeholder. Like, they hold the timber before you hit it. Like, who the hell makes timber? So, but yeah, man.
So the week has been filled in the last 2 weeks, depending on how you see. I mean, we talked about, the situation with the good brother Ice Cube and what have you. And but Black Men and Trump has been, I mean, I think there was a 538 piece, which I didn't get to read all the way. I guess I should read it all the way at some point. I guess I will. But it had referenced like even like a improvement in numbers, supposedly. Then I read some other things that basically was like, nah, not really. They're like, actually, nah, Black men like are pretty much voting, at least in the larger polling, are more likely to vote, as they did, and the change is more in terms of actual polling, meaning people who are actually probably going to vote.
Exactly.
Right, because I think it's really important for this next little piece of conversation to talk about people who are actually going to vote, right, and then sentiment. Because there's people who have a sentiment around the orange-haired wonder who leaves people outside in the cold in North Dakota. It's so cold there too. It's so cold.
Wild dude. He's a wild
right.
dude, man.
And the folks having a sentiment towards that man, and folks who actually are going to probably go vote. And so I mean, we're going to tilt to the sentiment because it's a fascinating piece with this. And I mean, what I'll just say to open it up is I got 2 calls over the previous weekend from campaigns seeing if I had turned in my ballot yet, and then to vote for 2 state offices that were both Democrats. Now, I mean, outside of that, I ain't had nobody. I said this in the Ice Cube conversation. I haven't felt like anyone's actually actively campaigned to me as a Black male voter, which, if people don't know, in the demographic data that can be used for like campaigns and stuff, they put race and gender and everything. So you can target ads, you can, and I would say even on my YouTube, and I don't know how much YouTube knows about me, but I got a lot of Trump thingies. Like I'll turn it on. And
YouTube knows all about you, man.
Yeah, I'm saying I think YouTube probably got it right? YouTube probably knows who it's talking to. So I'm like, well, if I'm seeing all these little Trump things at the, when you open the YouTube page, who else is seeing all these little Trump? It was like Biden's a zombie or some shit.
Yeah.
I said, what the?
Yeah.
The anti-zombie vote.
His ads, man.
So, I just wanted us to unpack this a little bit because like the tone of the responses, today or yesterday, Lil Wayne with the like, I don't know what kind of sweater situation he had on there. That was a real interesting outfit he had on. Sort of like with a thumbs up. I was almost to the degree where I was like, is this a real picture? Like, did this actually happen?
Yeah, I thought it was like, what's my man used to Anthony Hemmett, clone.
Yeah, clone.
Bobby Hemmett. Remember Bobby Hemmett?
Clone.
Bill Cosby, clone. Lil Wayne, clone.
You know what I'm saying? I'm like, is this for real? And then, then somebody's like, well, it's not like I've been out here taking political pointers from Lil Wayne, but, no disrespect to him. I just ain't heard that was, that wasn't a particular trust I placed in him. But then I trying to look at the way folks respond. And this was like I said, my nagging issue with the Cube conversation is the analysis of of the situation in the way that appear that you're like you're speaking to the black men who may be thinking this is almost like you should be ashamed of yourself, but like not in a way that there's like any kind of like mutual respect. It's like, oh, you should be ashamed of yourself. Look at you out here voting for Trump. How could you do this to your people? And it just strikes me as like that. I mean, that's a very performative way to respond because you know that ain't in no way going to change that person's vote if that's what if they was going to actually vote or their opinion. Let's just stay there. Right. That is not an argument that makes them. We're gonna go, man. Well, dang, they disapprove of me. Right. Maybe I should change. It's like I don't think he was looking for your approval to begin with, dog. So
no,
if you perceive, it's like we talk about if I know something and I don't say nothing to you that could be unhealthy for you, then I need to say something to you. But when I say it to you, I need to say it to you and let you know that I am saying this to you and I want to engage you around this topic because something that you said made me concerned about your well-being. Not because I want to go, I think you're stupid or I think you're silly or, I think you're misinformed or, and even if it's an inappropriate analysis that you're a misogynist, telling them that does not necessarily change the behavior. Like telling that without any other trust development, without any other relational bonds, without any other mutual understanding does not make that man go, I didn't think about it from that perspective, Justice. Maybe next time I should be more thoughtful in my words. It's like, it just amounts to some big light-skinned dude with new baby dreadlocks that he don't like what I had to say. Well, fuck him anyway.
Right.
I don't like that. I don't like that dude neither. Let's go. Like, end of the conversation. Cognitively, I've moved on. Like, I'm not going to any longer engage in thought. So I took a lot of air there.
No.
Getting that out. What are some of your thoughts about this black men and Trump thing?
Oh, man. So, I think to add on to your point, just I think a real robust point that you made is the admonishment. And I think we're in a time that we think like admonishment or like cancel culture works as a strategy. But it doesn't. It's just performative, right? Like, because people made fun of Lil Wayne, does anyone think Lil Wayne's behavior is going to change? Or if you were down with what Lil Wayne thought and you listened to Lil Wayne for advice, do you think I care what you think if I listen to Lil Wayne? If I'm a person who takes political advice from Lil Wayne, why do I care what you think? I don't take political advice from you. So right. Clearly we've had a failure to connect here. Because I listen to what Wayne say. I don't listen to what you say. The other part of it is we talk a lot about Black folks coming together, but the idea that any Black person, because they've made a decision that you disagree with, is beyond the pale becomes a very challenging concept for unity versus uniformity, right? Even in something as important, I think, and agree, as this particular campaign, which I think this campaign is extremely important for America and the world. I agree. But what I don't agree is that by telling someone, if you do this, I can't mess with you. But meanwhile, you listen to the same person talk about the most dysfunctional shit in the world, and you never cancel them. But you cancel them because they like somebody that you don't like? That was more intense than the messaging that this person has made and put into the world for the last 25 years?
You told me that it was a slap, though. That track was a slap. It was hard. Like the way he spit that. I could dance to it. So I don't give a fuck about all that other stuff. But now...
But now, because he's going to vote for someone that I disagree with him voting for, now it's beyond the pale. Now he gets canceled. you didn't cancel him for all this other goofy shit that he said. You didn't cancel him because this was music to murder people to. You didn't cancel him before that. You ain't, you know, like somebody could create jobs and employment for Black folks, but you cancel them because of a conversation with somebody. Newsflash. Black folks in certain situations have always had to at least have conversations with people who other people perceive were beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has gone back for a long time. We had this fight with the boys at Booker T, when, you know what I'm saying? With you know what I mean? When he's talking to Muggs, and the boys like, man, why are you talking to them guys?
And he like, hey,
I'm talking to who's in play, right? And from him talking to who's in play, a lot of positive stuff for Black people came from it. Now, that does not, I'm not trying to say that makes all of it right. What I'm trying to say is that historically, we can look at a whole host of times that people had to engage with people who they found ultimately distasteful. The idea that talking to someone is beyond the pale. Because guess what? As much as Nancy Pelosi talks about not Donald Trump, she still is negotiating with Mnuchin to cut a deal. And she would have cut a deal, and some of the stuff that she got would have been distasteful to you. But guess what? She wouldn't have cared. Why? Because she had to cut a deal.
Mm-hmm.
She wants them gone, but she still would have had to cut a deal in the short term. Again, I don't support anything that Trump does for the most part. The guys that he brought home, or the people that they set into play with First Step, I'm glad that they're home. Do I think he did it because of a broader caring about the people that he brought home? Absolutely not.
Right.
I think they've been triangulating for this moment for 4 years.
Right.
Right. I think they've been thinking about this moment for 4 years. And I'm going to say this on here. The challenge is, has the Democratic Party been thinking about Black men for 4 years? Has the Democratic Party been thinking about Black men who've been dislocated from society, whether in jail or economically, for the last 4 years? What about the last 2.5 years where we had this love affair with white men from Appalachia who left one election, and we created books and ad stories ad nauseum around white men who stopped voting for the Democratic Party and trying to get them back?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, second most loyal population after Black women are Black men in the Democratic Party. And that's another conversation we don't have. That's like you brought up.
Right.
There's about 7 or 8 points between them, which is that sentiment and or vote between some Black men, and there's a strain of Black men who consider themselves up by your bootstraps guys. Or they make deals and cut deals in business and all that. And there has been for a long time. Right? And so I'm trying to give my man's name right now, that until 3 or 4 years ago was the head of the RNC. He was the head of the RNC a couple years ago. The Black man with glasses, he'd be on MSNBC all the time. He used to work for Marion Barry in DC. My point about that is, it's the Black dude. He used to, man, what is homie name, man? Hold on, I'm gonna find what his name is, because Black guy, RNC.
My man. I know you talk about
Michael Steele.
Michael Steele, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So Michael Steele, and a lot of people know, he got his start with Mary Berry. That's how he got in politics. But he was about getting money. He's about, uplifting yourself or bootstrap stuff. So he became the head of the RNC, right? There are logical, rational Black people who, for some reason, end up in the Republican Party. Just flat out. Doesn't mean I agree with them, but it doesn't mean they're not rational, and it doesn't mean we haven't been having this conversation.
Yeah.
So this idea, just real quick, this idea that the second most reliable vote didn't deserve attention But when you need them every 4 years, but there's been no what they call money in the street, there's been no true voter education for the last 4 years. And then the strategy in the Black tutor sphere is to admonish them. The same people who do never vote, but you need them to do something right now. Here's the thing. In their mind, they don't need you, but you need them.
Right. And if you've ever dealt with someone, especially when that considers themselves, if they consider themselves a hustler, so to speak, or a mover and shaker in any way, if they feel leveraged, meaning or that you're leveraged in need of them, they gonna drive a hard bargain for you to get their time. He need me.
Right.
I ain't going over there. Why should I go up there? Why should I go answer this phone call? What are they gonna do for me? Like you've created the perfect storm. You know what I'm saying? It's been especially someone who may have experienced a repeated life of transactional advancement.
True.
Right?
God.
They go, hey man, everything somebody's supposed to come through with something. Like, you want me to come to the thing? Give me a gift card. You want me to show up to the what's name? Man, help me with some gas. You want me.
Exactly.
I don't need you. Like tomorrow, I'm gonna be out here by myself. You ain't gonna be here.
The money's over. Here's the thing and this is real, man. And we're not really having these conversations places, but we're gonna have this conversation. You paying these guys for right now. You paying these women for right now. Guess what? Tuesday, the money's gone. There'll be no more money for them Tuesday. Mm. You think everybody knows that in a transactional relationship? You think this is about caring and sharing? The party has not been caring and sharing with you. They give you money to advance their interests and they're done. They don't ask you if you vote. They ask you to go out and tell other people to vote. Mm. Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't care if you vote. You know what I mean? They're paying you to get other people to do stuff that look like you, that understand you. Mm-hmm. But why do we have to, guess what? Republicans don't have to do that during this time because they serve their groups all 4 years. You never hear the problem with Republican Latino outreach. They know who they can get and who they can't.
Yeah, they
know the Mexican dude that's full of machismo that's pro-Trump.
They lean into that dude too.
They lean into homie. They already took care of him. He's already cool. It's only black folks that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have to figure out ways to deal with black men. And then, like in some sort of strange element of relationships, what black women and black men who know better than them is going to shame them? These dudes is in jail. Listen, let me tell you something. This is real, God. The jails is pro-Trump. I would just give it up. And I ain't going to say all the streets is pro-Trump because it obviously changes from city to city. Yeah. But in Pennsylvania, I can say this reasonably. The jails is pro-Trump from a certain population and the streets from a perception, from a Tony Montana-esque worldview is in the Trump.
Yeah.
They look at a guy who's bluffing, lying, and faking.
Right.
And winning.
Yep.
Right? There's a certain population of people that only two things matters in the world: getting money and jail.
Yep.
Now, I will leave it up to everyone else to figure out who's the population of people who only think about them two things in the world. And if those two things are the most important thing for you, right? Money and jail, or getting out of jail. The stimulus package. Think of how much money, and people are going to go to jail, like we talked about before.
Oh yeah, oh no,
the IRS is coming. The IRS is going to come.
People going to be paid. They're going to be like, "Hey, can I get a payment plan?"
The jail is coming. But like, if you're from a street level It's his dollar day. Dude, put money in the hood. Think about the people that we lionize from street culture to political culture. Why? Because they put money in the street. You think Trump and them didn't know about this stimulus and know how much money they were just throwing out and knowing that some of it was going to be fraud?
Yeah.
The Senate didn't like it. But Trump knew clearly what he was doing.
And especially, I mean, when you couple in, and I think there's some like there's good analysis around. I think the way concurrently over the last 4 or 5 years, like the concept of entrepreneurship and like that there's this riddle to crack around the financial system. And then once you play the game, once you're doing it like this, you know what I'm saying? You out here, right? Which ain't really a new thing because it was dudes that had weird that stuff like, nah, it's a business, brother. I'm corporate. I use my EIN and like back to the 80s. That ain't nothing necessarily new, but the scale is different, right? Yeah. And the degree to which, I think it's easy to access the conversation, right? One of the things I do with some of my social media accounts is I do try to, I try to look at accounts that it seems like Black men are looking at and what they talking about on them and how they're framing the world, which I don't know if anybody at the Democratic Party did that, but they should, right? And then, and I don't know how deep necessarily that is at the Republican Party and any of the other parties, but the idea that like, yeah, you put it out there like, oh, you got a dude in the office who apparently with a multi-million-dollar lead due to the financial realities of his family, seems to use the tax structure. Like he does do some actual businesses, sprinkle around in there, sprinkled around in there liberally. But then also you use all the rules available to have cash flow. So you move some money over here, then you move some money over there, then you swing it back this way. And then, and all in the meantime, you get to use all the money. So you live in, you're driving private planes and, high class beverages and, single malt scotches, you know what I'm saying? A lot of brown water.
For everybody else, he don't drink. He just likes hamburgers from McDonald's. He's the weirdest
and well done steak.
And with ketchup.
With ketchup. Oh man, no class at all, man. Yeah. Let me tell you. It's like school on Sunday, scotch. Jack.
Don't drink scotch, but eat hamburgers and well done steak with ketchup. I tell you.
Okay, man. Right.
So you joy to be white.
Yeah. So you get out here with it, and you can see, and then like where I can see where the logic goes. Where you decide, like, yeah, there's, especially in the context of, well, why should I really like the other guy? The other guy, I feel like he's a career politician. Like you can line up the basic analysis pieces that can make it very easy to just go, you've not given me a strong reason to go for that dude. And how
Let me say this. So to your point, like I know, if anybody could feel like they could pay less taxes, they would. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a certain population of people that say, I want to pay my taxes and make the world okay. Especially mugs that feel like they don't get what they want from the government. They don't want to pay no taxes. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I want to pay taxes. I pay taxes and I want to pay taxes. But if somebody said to me, and this is outside of the fact that he's horrible for people, like, you can pay less taxes. Did you eat the rest of your food?
I like a little piece of fish.
All right, eat that before you eat that. Okay, pardon me.
But I did eat all my
life checks, life calls.
It's all good. Peace, W. My man.
Get out of here, man. So, so like to your point, like, yeah, people like, I'm like him. I'm with this, right? Like I'm with this, and I want to say this based on your point. The idea, and when progressives set out between Bernie and Kamala, right? And when people decided to put out information to kind of derail Kamala Harris, Senator Harris, let me give her a proper terminology, derail Senator Harris from the nomination and created this space around, well, Senator Harris locked black people up, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a perfectly good conversation to have, I guess, if you thought she was having a personal one or a private conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think that Republicans are not using the same stuff and dudes in the street is not saying the same thing? That Senator Harris locked generations of black people up in California, even though it's not true.
Right.
But like this idea, but this was started by progressives who were to the left of her.
Right.
And now Trump is losing, or the moral reckoning around the 94 crime bill, which my perspective on this is totally different now, man. Last night I watched I think I might have sent it to you, the ABC special of Marion Barry in like the late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. And where the preacher's like, we need more cops. we got to slap these kids. We got to let these kids know, right? And that was a totally acceptable thing to say on TV as a black preacher in 1989, 1990. Now, 30 years from now, you want to say that wasn't the right thing. Okay, that's fair. I actually agree with you. But now you can see where the 94 crime bill passes, right?
Yep.
Because in 1990, no one knew what to do and put Mugshot. The only solution was police.
Yep.
So you say, well, Joe Biden was the architect of the 94 crime bill. So now Trump letting guys out of jail, or the perception, because it's a whole convergence of factors. It's COVID, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's overcrowding. It's a convergence of factors. Some of it is the First Step Act, right?
Yeah.
So what it looked like is Trump, quote unquote, gave you money. Trump letting guys out of jail. Senator Harris and Joe Biden been locking black people up for 30 years. For God, that all they care about is money in jail.
Right.
If that's it,
it's a clear choice.
It's a clear choice. They don't care. They don't make decisions based on global policy. Fighting China, they don't make decisions.
They're not thinking about industrial infrastructure development and free trade. They're like, well, free trade. If we trade NAFTA back, you know what I'm saying? We got to end this feudal war with China, baby. Like, they care about that. They like money, jail. I don't want to go back to jail, or if I go to jail, I want a chance to get out of jail. Right? Like, all this other stuff you're talking about is not. It doesn't matter to me.
And I want to say, again, going back to this whole romanticization of the white working class male, even though that wasn't where the problem lied. The problem lied in white college age males who made a financial decision to vote for Trump.
Yep.
We romanticized them and said the jobs left. How do we get them back? Right? So the thought was they were single issue voters, but we made that okay.
Yeah.
Right? So why is it not okay if a certain segment of black men are single issue voters? Why is it not okay acknowledging that there's certain populations of certain religious voters who are single issue voters? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that not okay? And so it still is this system of we're responding to what we perceive as the black stuff that we need to respond to, but it also breaks down of an issue within the black community of, are we organizing collectively? Are we making sure that the issues, agendas, and perspectives of everybody is being involved?
Mm-hmm. So
that when you put a platform together, and if you've got a segment of mugs that say, hey, they over here, that you dealt with the segment of our population before you went over there. Because now we're having this thing that I'm going to say is going to be tighter than people think, either that more than the people are going to vote for Trump. I think people, to your point about sentiment and voting, I don't think a lot of people are going to vote for Trump. I just think some guys ain't vote.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're like pro-Trump and they're actually going to make a decision, but they're not going to vote for Biden. But we know that not voting for Biden in this context is essentially voting for Trump.
Right. And especially in certain states, if black men don't go vote at the same frequency or at the frequency that the rate that they could, meaning in the raw numbers, that it could be meaningful. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
In terms of the outcome. Some states it won't matter all that much. You know what
Doesn't
I'm saying?
matter in California. If you do in LA and you don't vote, nobody cares.
Yeah.
I can't say nobody cares, but
it'll be all right. Like it ain't really gonna be, it ain't gonna be no big swang. And I think the one other thing I wanted to add, touching on what you said is because it made me think about too, like I said, there was a world and there's a future world where someone says, you know what I need to do? I need to get out here and I need to get as many assemblies of these black men that we keep talking about and being mad at and ask them what they think. Like I need to actively, as a political organizer, organize them.
Right.
Reach out to them. Go, hey man, look, I heard you. We trying to figure out. We need to harness their abilities and ask some questions. Now, they may not talk to you. They may not be interested, right? But most, humans, in my experience, we all kind of want an audience. Like, that's why you can always get somebody to say something crazy to the news if you try hard enough. Why you can always locate, you can always find something if you really try, because somebody was just waiting. They've been waiting their whole life just to get a moment to feel famous and to be heard.
Right.
And then not just in a negative sense, but in a very real sense. Like, yeah, I want to be heard. I want somebody to be like, man, so brother, tell me how would you approach it? Right? Or what do you think is happening with the young people? Right now, what they say may not be as informed as other people or whomever, or it may not sound the way people want it to sound. But there's a place in that we've had at times, and I think we can look to from a practice for a point, go, hey, let's talk to people, get their thoughts, say, hey, I want to say this back to you because this is what I heard you say is most important to you.
Right.
All right. And then like now some of this, candidate X might have that on the ballot on their platform. Some may not. But if people feel engaged, in my experience, they're more likely to, go, well, they don't really agree. They don't think it the way I think it, but I ain't mad at them. Like I'm not antagonistic to their success, so to speak. Right. Where I think the way that this plays out is like, yeah, like, man, I ain't gonna go vote for what's the name? Like, you know what I'm saying? The law and order thing, I think, like I say, when you put it to a smell test of practice and it doesn't really stand scrutiny, you know what I mean? Yeah. At some point, state's attorney, listen, this is Justice Rajee PSA. If you are involved in any form of criminal endeavor, it's a criminal endeavor. You get jammed up, man, you get jammed up. Yeah, I really, please, if you think the liberation of our people is about you not getting jammed up for shit you did that you knew was wrong, I'm gonna let you know right now. Let's let it go, fam. You gotta ride that. You gotta pay the cost for Now, if it was round, we get into the fineries and the details and the vagaries, and we can also talk about the reality of having alternative ways that we actually deal with whatever you did and how we reconcile and bring you back to the community, right?
Right.
So, right. So me saying that is not saying that go to jail and throw away the key and all that in any way is the answer. Right. But me saying that is, if we was on the Black People Freedom Land and we said, hey man, you can't be moving no packages through here, and you got caught with some packages, it's going to be a reckoning. We told you can't bring no packages up in here, man. Right? So we're going to deal with it in whatever the manifestation of that reality would be. And I think that I just feel as though I got to remind people of that. Because like sometimes we get in this place where I'm like, we talking about this, like we all act like that shit's cool. Shit ain't cool. But anyway, I'm gonna let you go. You know what I mean? Get it how you live, as they say. You know what I mean? You gotta do what you gotta do. But I think that the bigger concern with all this is really like, are you really working to get the people who are going to vote for you out to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can choose, there's a pathway of choice. And I would say it seems like there's a lot of, Black intellectuals, Black, public figure types or pundits who seem to be much more negative. But I would say, at least from what I've seen, I haven't seen actually from any of the campaigns that they themselves are like, yeah, man, y'all tripping. Y'all need to come out and vote for us. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Besides Joe Biden saying if you vote for Trump, you ain't Black.
Yeah, but that was early on. He didn't get his. Somebody told him that was going to go better than it went. Like, Joe, that was.
Yeah, you know what? That's right. I'm probably sure.
That was what was that? That was like June. Was that June or May? When was that? It was a while ago. It's a whole different campaign now.
I mean, okay. So for the sake of it,
why did he say that? That's ridiculous.
Here's my thing. If you vote for him, you ain't Black. He said it straight like that too. Like he said. But to your point, that's like something that somebody with real Black say to you, and then you repeat, but you shouldn't have repeated it.
Yeah, you shouldn't have said that. Yeah,
that's like something that a Black person shared with you in privacy. Like you know what I'm saying? Somebody vote for Trump, man. I ain't Black, man. I'm Black. I can tell you about that. Joe said, for real? All right, man.
Joe said, I'm gonna throw that up in there, man. The young people say I gotta flip up my, style. You know what I'm saying? I'm an old dude. I'm trying to learn new tricks. It's like, nah, Joe, don't say that, Joe.
Yeah, that trick, that trick.
Stick to that. I'm a dude from Scranton that might sock you energy. Yeah, like we can rock with that. Like, you know what I'm saying? We can respect that.
Well, my man said, no ad-libbing, brother. Stick to the script. No ad-libbing, brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, this ain't the time for no ad-libbing. But yeah, and I guess, and again, we can talk next week. And when we talk next week, either we will be prescient geniuses or it didn't mean as much as we thought. I am deeply building and willing on the latter. This is one time, as I become more mindful, I do not want to be right. I want to be wrong as all get out. All right? I want to be dead ass wrong in my perception. And in that the sentiment of these guys in the jails calling in, talking about they with Trump, I want to be wrong that even if I'm right, even if we're right? I don't want that to matter as much as I think it could.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I want that to matter way less than right now. I think that it could matter. But then it's also, I think, important, and since this is a run-up, and I say this to people, man, get your food for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Get everything you need for them first 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I work in government, so again, this won't come out. I don't want this to come out before Election Day, but I guess it does. Cool, Just. It's all right. But if it does, but I'm saying that the real square business. I'm saying that because I just think there are so many unknowns about how Tuesday night goes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's so many lawsuits I think that are coming. Mm-hmm. Because I think the Trump campaign is going to sue that there is widespread fraud in Pennsylvania in particular because of mail-in ballots, walk-up ballots.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're going to contest everything coming out of Philadelphia. I think it's going to be widespread, to actually figure out who is the president. I think it's going to be like 2000 over again. Like, we're not going to know who actually won. We won't, unless it's a landslide. We won't know on the 3rd.
Yeah.
I think everybody just think what that means for the 4th and the 5th. I think if it comes out that people feel like Trump stole the election, I think there will be some real stuff out here.
Yeah.
If a certain population perceive that this election was stolen.
Yeah.
And so I just say to folks, like, in America, we've had relatively peaceful transitions of power. I think it's frankly one of the hallmarks of what we call Western democracy, whatever you want to call that. And I would say that we're probably the only Western democracy that's in question right now. You never thought in Britain that was going to be an issue. Say what you will about the fights in Britain,
right,
about people having on white wigs and debating, but they pass over the country if somebody lost, right?
Yeah.
Canada. We're going to have a country where there is actually a question of people's perception of the transfer of power. Mm-hmm. And so, I just want people to be thoughtful around that, because I think that's the broader geopolitical issue.
Right.
That we can't see in America, that, like, if you're looking outside America, people are looking and saying, so wait, it's going to be debatable who's the president after the presidency? That shit sounds like Venezuela. That shit sounds like Bolivia. That shit sounds like the Congo, right? Like, that shit sounds like what you say these other countries. And
then there's the idea that, and I was just saying, our conservative brothers have been seeding this idea repeatedly for the last 5 years, way longer.
Yeah.
You got these elections, fraud. We need these laws. We need to make sure. And it's like, well, it doesn't appear that people got to leave work sometimes to go vote. And a lot of people ain't trying to lose a day of work to go lie about their electoral position. However, right, like we really have had this ongoing thing of like, well, if you could trust, it's like, well, if you could trust it, and I'll just say, for everybody in America, I live in Oregon. I voted by mail for the last, 16 years. It's not really a thing. It works actually fairly simply. So stop tripping.
Well, but that's
I understand.
Y'all,
I'm saying? I understand it's new.
Y'all are enlightened, so.
So you said
it must be the air, the trees, and the beer.
The trees. The air, the good beer. The good beer.
The air, the trees, and the beer, man. Y'all are enlightened, man. I just be like, you know what I'm saying? You're trying to figure out how y'all have figured all this stuff out. Over here. To your point, 16 years you've been doing it. Before this year, you tell a motherfucker in the East Coast, mail in a ballot. What? Ain't mailing no ballot? I'm going to vote. Like, you might be like, that ain't a real vote until COVID, until a global pandemic.
Oh, man, I do every year, man. You fill your little drawing out, put in your envelope. You can either usually we end up dropping it off because just timing wise, we'll miss, when you can't actually mail it. So we'll take it to the, you drive up, state troopers there, just put it in a little steel box. You out of there, Jack.
See, I'm telling you, that's enlightened democracy there.
Oh, yeah, man.
That's the testament to the top of the map.
Testament to the top of the map. I like that.
Shout out to the top of the map, man.
Word up. Well, I think we got into that pretty good. You want anything else before we?
Nah, man. I just think for the good of the order, man. I just think it's, OG Twink, was on the phone with him earlier while he had a host of things to share with me about elections and this and everything else.
I'm sure he did.
And first of all, pay these people, man. You know what I mean? And I'm saying this to the Democratic Party in particular, man. Pay these people, man. Don't stress these guys out, man. If these people got time to work for you,
yeah,
this money matters to them. Yeah. If you told somebody you're gonna pay him on Tuesday, you told somebody you're gonna pay him on Saturday, pay him on Saturday. Because trust me, they've been borrowing money and doing stuff with the idea that they're gonna pay somebody back Saturday. They didn't told somebody I get paid on Saturday.
Right.
And it's real hard for them to go back and tell that person who they've been telling they're gonna get paid on Saturday, they're gonna get paid on Tuesday. So pay them people. But also, the biggest thing, man, from talking to him, and I mean, we've talked about it here, we talked about it today, is voter education, to your point. But I think a lot of people are scared of voter education because the status quo doesn't just help the bad people, to some degree, the status quo also helps the good people. Because there's a set of voters. There's a set of static voters.
Yeah, you know who
their
are.
interests.
Yeah.
You know their interests. You know what they want. You know where they are, right? You know how to talk to them. So it's a repetitiveness in a process that you can rinse, wash, repeat, right? That's easier even for the good people.
Yeah.
However, the benefit of the unknown is greater than the familiarity of the known, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So in this sense, it even though it's more money, which means you got to raise more money, which I know puts people in a certain vicious cycle. Because if I got to go raise money to do voter education, that's more money I got to put on the street, right? But it's the thing that actually creates stronger communities. While there's some data has come in recently talking about people that vote and engagement, and while it's not a one-to-one, it is an interesting idea of when you connect the people who already care about their communities and then you give them another tool, and then they're educated more on how the system works and use those other tools, you get a more empowered populace. And then you get people who know now how to compete for issues, how to compete for scarce resources. So I just say voter education, man. Like it's not okay that no one knows who their congressman is. It's not okay no one knows who their senator is. You know what I mean? It's not okay no one knows who their ward chairman is. You know, and you know, going forward, Black folks win, lose, or draw. We gotta have a different way that we're figuring out our unity versus uniformity. So that's it for me.
Word up, peace. The only thing I'll add, I saw a meme a brother posted, and it's the one with the little like the puppet, and it's like, I think it's like cocaine on one side of the table, and then there's some other, I don't know, it's food or something on this side of the table, and it was like unity, or what he said, coming together or voting, and then the little puppet is obviously in the second screen is snorting the cocaine. Not that I advocate snorting cocaine, you know, stay drug free, kids. You know what I'm saying? Right. However, you know, the joke, the intent of the meme was that we love the voting conversation, but not the coming together conversation. And I understand the sentiment, again, going to our earlier theme of this conversation. But what I will say to anyone who shared that meme and to the world, that if people come together, what practices will they be using to determine their collective voice and vision? And just to be mindful that if you stigmatize the conceptuality of voting as if some other thing is not voting, that when they go in the other thing and something looks like voting, they may not want to be involved in that either. So just, you know, be careful. Be careful what you negatively stigmatize. You know what I mean? Because, you know, what today seems like a challenge could tomorrow be an opportunity. And, you know, so, you know, and as I guess I'll just make my theme video, you know, Black people come together, do stuff together, communicate and come up with, you know, like if you're talking to each other, it's a lot harder to be confused and deceived. So that, say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, Majestic. Thank you to you for listening. You can support the podcast best by listening, of course, sharing, rating and subscribing. You know, put it on with you know, your friends and your family. It's the best way to get more ears listening, and also, you know, give us some feedback. So you can hit us on Instagram at goodbrothers_pod, or you can look up at Justice Rajee on pretty much anywhere, and it should get to me eventually. You can also support the podcast via Patreon and become a patron. For as little as, I think it's $2 a month, you can help offset the costs of producing and creating this content and future works that will come from the time and energy placed here. My will is that folks have been safe and made wise decisions in the last 24 to 48 hours. And whatever the situation may be in terms of the electoral outcomes, know and understand that we still always will have work to do as people and as a community to make the world we want. So please be safe and add on. Peace.